Welcome. Welcome to United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities. I'm Jennifer Oz Freeman. I'm the Assistant Professor and Program Director of Theology and the Arts at United. I can show you my face as well. We're really excited to have Benedict Scheuer with us here tonight, zooming in from Ohio, I believe.
Yes.
Feel free to grab refreshments as you wish. And we'll get started, and we'll have some time for Q&A and conversation at the end of the presentation. Benedict Scheuer is a queer and mixed-race artist devoted to an interdisciplinary practice informed by drawing, gardening, nature, belonging, and meditation. Central to his practice is a spirituality that champions sensation, the miracle of drawing a line, and the philosophy of interbeing, the interconnection of all things. He has a BA in Environmental Studies from Yale University and an MFA in Visual Art from The Ohio State University. Scheuer has exhibited and performed throughout the United States at galleries, including Acre Projects, or ACRE Projects, Chicago, the Wexner Center for the Arts, and was recently awarded the Greater Columbus Arts Council Visual Fellowship. Scheuer currently resides in Columbus, Ohio, where he makes many walks between his studio and lovely blooming dahlias. And tonight he will be speaking to us about his exhibit that's in our space and we've been enjoying and so thankful for. The exhibit is titled Everything Communicating, and his talk tonight is Drawing to Belong. Well, join me in welcoming Benedict.
Thank you, Jennifer. And everyone can hear me okay? Just want to confirm. Okay, yes. Cool. So yeah, I will get started. Okay, great. So before I begin, I want to take a moment to thank Jennifer for welcoming me and my work to United. It's been a really incredible experience just connecting with the community at United, and it's been really enriching also just getting to know Jennifer, and her curiosity and belief in my work has been really meaningful. She's just really incredible, and so thank you, Jennifer. In addition, I also want to thank Cheryl, who helped me with the install at United, and it's been really great getting to know Cheryl, and honestly, I think we've become long-time friends, so we'll be in touch for many years, I imagine, which has been great. And I also want to thank my Uncle John. He's really excellent when it comes to connecting people, I've come to learn, and I'm really grateful for his talent at doing that. It's really generous, and just his support for my art in general, in addition to the support that comes from my family and friends. It's super special to me to have my work exhibited in United because it's a space where people are spending a lot of time, as opposed to a traditional gallery space where you might just kind of wander in for an hour or two. This community gets access to the work in the banal moments, the exciting moments over coffee, conversation. And I like to think that there are many more moments there that allow this community to kind of tap into the work and have a meaningful connection, and that's meaningful to me. It's also great to show work in Minnesota. It's where I grew up, in Cloquet, so northern Minnesota, and it's where I first started establishing a meaningful relationship to nature. And lastly, I want to thank the Greater Columbus Arts Council for funding the work that is at United currently. And before I start, also, I want to give a brief trigger warning related to self-harm, and that'll be for the first 10 minutes of the lecture. And so if that's something that you're sensitive to, take time to take care of yourself. And without further ado, I'll get started. So today's talk is going to circle these three ideas. We have belonging, we have mindfulness, and we have ecosystems. I really view them all as the same thing, but I think it's really helpful to address how they're parts to a larger whole and how drawing can simultaneously illuminate their connectivity and presence while also being a force that, for me, strings them together. Dispersed along this path are going to be some images of my work, and I'll use them as visual aids to my thoughts. But I'm also hoping that in addition to reinforcing the ideas that I present, they'll also complicate them a little bit. My goal of this talk is not to provide any concrete answers about anything. It's a bit more personal than that, and I'm viewing it as an opportunity to share how I find meaning in my life vocation, which is making, and specifically drawing. And so before we get started, I wanted to say if you have questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. And honestly, I probably won't pay attention to the chat while I'm talking, but I'll get to them at the end. And with that, we're going to dive right into the first section of this talk, which will be about 50 minutes. So we're going to start with belonging as closed system. So in 2018, I performed Blue Arms, a performance piece at Roy G. Biv Gallery in Columbus, Ohio. And so these two images are the before and the after images that I took privately that kind of bookended this performance. During the piece, which was roughly 20 minutes long, I was asking this question, can we hold ourselves? In the context of this lecture, I think we can rephrase that question to what can belonging to ourselves look like? In order to kind of hold that question, I poured honey onto my arms and proceeded to suck it from my limbs. In the process, bruises formed upon my arms. Hickeys are interesting to me. They're a form of making a mark, and in this way, they're a mysterious form of drawing. And they're usually a gift from someone else in token of passion, possession, love, lust, feral connection, as if a lover is saying, I'll pull your blood so close to the orifice of my mouth. In such a scenario, the mark becomes evidence that a connection has occurred. It tells us that sensation has been exchanged, that pain and pleasure in this moment we're passing through. Thinking about this performance through the lens of belonging, I visualize a closed system, and that's represented here by the shape of my body. We can see a self-contained loop where sensation is traveling from my mouth to my arm, to my brain, and back through my arm, etc. In this closed system, I exist primarily within myself, and sensation has no way to escape or exit. I'm focused on my own body, my own arms, my own skin, and what's happening outside of me is not really that relevant. It's sort of like drawing a circle over and over and over on top of itself. And so from this biting and sucking, the sensations of pain and pleasure remain looping inside of me. It's not passed on to a lover, a partner. In this moment, I'm quite alone. And I perform this aloneness to a crowd. And it's pretty intense as an experience for me. And it's made more so through the amplification of noises, these sucking noises via a microphone that's close to me and kind of projecting that sound really loudly through the space. Midway through the performance, unplanned to me, this loop sort of broke open. And the loop broke open with direct eye contact. So in this moment of connecting eye to eye with individuals in the room, or in the case of this image, the camera, it felt as if the pain had a place to go. And I remember one person specifically nodding to me in a gesture of support. Some people would look away. Everyone had a different reaction to my looking, and that was interesting to me. The performance was emotionally exhausting to perform. I performed it twice. The second time that I performed it, immediately after leaving the stage, I started crying immediately, sort of bewildering to me. So on this slide, we see a related performance. It's untitled, and this is my first time talking about it publicly. And this time, instead of having an audience to view the work, I'm totally alone in a photography studio. And I've set the camera to take a photograph on repeat every 10 seconds. And different from the last performance, these marks that are on my body are not bruises. They're lines of ink that have been scratched into my skin with a pen. And so from left to right, you can kind of see this gradual transition of my body becoming covered with lines of ink. On the left, no marks, just kind of starting on the face there. And as you can see, it gradually progresses and progresses until I'm quite covered. In this performance, drawing, this time much more literally, became the translation of pain. The pain was condensed through a bottleneck of a pen and expelled as lines. And you can see this in the lines. They're violent marks containing an energy that's chaotic and sharp. And as they dig into my skin, their translation of my pain also becomes a creator of pain. So looping and looping, pain is going out and in, pain out and return. The system once again is closed into itself. And the pain was amplifying and it gave no moment of release. The performance finished when the pen stopped working and actually got clogged by the oils in my skin. And when I ripped the pen apart with my teeth in a gesture of completion, I once again found myself making eye contact with the camera, exposing an image of myself in this sort of visceral state of mind. I was once again finding that way to make eye contact and breaking open the closed loop. After this, I was shaking. So in these two works, we observe a closed system in which I'm belonging only to myself. And so I'm making through sensation that's isolated within my body, so much so that in these specific instances, the drawings never actually leave my body. They exist as marks upon my skin. My presence is totally contained to me. I'm representing my presence during these performances with this diagram. And so you see a larger blue circle, and that is there to represent the sort of perceived boundary between myself and my environment. And in this case, I think it could represent skin, potentially. The inner circle, this red dot, indicates where I'm choosing to be present while I'm making this work. I'm belonging only to this closed internal system of self, not expanding beyond this blue boundary. I'm not present to anything happening outside of the circle, really just focused on these internal feelings and sensations. Outside of these controlled moments of performance, though, I wonder about where my focus rests. And truthfully, at the time when I was making these performances about 5 years ago, my attention was not steady like the red dot that I had pictured in the previous diagram. And so going through my everyday, my awareness, my emotions was pretty dull, confused, and unaware, and been like that for a while. And I think that's why I was making this work. So inside, I was kind of feeling like this wasp that's pictured in this like looping video, being repeatedly bit by a spider. It's caught in a web. And instead of focusing on this feeling that was happening inside of me, I was totally ignoring it. And art started to open that up. And I share this not because, I share this because at some point I started to understand something was wrong. And so I started getting help. Meditation was one of the things that really helped me to begin channeling and paying attention to what's happening inside my body. And I guess that is related to this idea of healing. And so this talk isn't about mental health, but mental health is tied into how I took the path that I'm on. And so I just thought that was important to acknowledge in the context of this conversation. So the first chapter is complete. We're on to the next one. And instead of belonging as an internal system, we've transitioned into belonging as an external system. And so for this part of the talk, I'm going to show images from 2 photographic series that I completed between 2015 and 2018. They're titled respectively, I Am a Wilderness and Limb. They have nothing to do with the physical act of drawing, but I am interested in the state of mind that they require for their making and how it might relate to the way that I draw now. So for this work, I was utilizing my body and placing it into nature, photographing myself. Despite my body being actively present in this work, I began forgetting that it was mine. And by this, I mean, it started to feel like something else. Here, my body is weaving between trees, not as my body, but as an undulating line or a snake or a breeze that's passing through. I was talking about wilderness in this work, trying to break down the dichotomy between nature and culture and advocating that humans and nature are the same. And you can see this in the way that my body flows into and finds harmony with natural forms. So in the image on the left, the black and white image, the lower part of my body is sort of merging with this like poop of clover. And the removal of color in this image was intentional as a means of kind of merging those two things together even further. In the image on the right, a similar thing is happening. My arms are kind of extended up into this plant that I found along the river. And once again, I'm using color to merge things together instead of an absence of color. It's sort of this wave of color that is working to mesh things together. And that was produced with a flash that I used a red gel over in the moment to produce, not a function of a digital manipulation. So in retrospect, I don't think that the work really achieves a true acknowledgement of how humans and nature are the same. Instead, looking at this work, I see it as sort of offering myself up to nature. So finding a location for an image and then responding to it as a composition where my body was sort of this material to fit into the space. My body functioned to integrate into the scene. To belong to nature in this specific scenario, I was removing sort of this humanness of myself and allowing my body to conform to the space. And my emotions were rarely present in the work. So instead of saying that, hey tree, like you and I, we belong together, let's meet somewhere in between and find some common ground, I was trying to will my body to become a tree. Willing it to become some sort of a strange beast, unknowable to me. Willing it to become a sensitive flower. And willing it to become a mound in the forest. Within the performance work that I shared, I gave you all this diagram. And I wanted to express that I was making from a place within the circle, this internal space, not really exercising any awareness to what was happening outside of me. But within this photographic work, my attention shifted. I was no longer focusing really on what was happening inside. And instead, I was really consumed by environment in a whole new way. And I was trying to belong to that which was outside of me. And so thinking about that wasp from earlier, the internal self was being totally ignored. This particular image in the series of work that I've been sharing really caught my eye though when I was making this presentation. Feels a lot different. Here, my body is sitting as a slope and an incline, and it's shaping to the slant of that earth that's there. But my hands are rested and reveal something a bit more human to me. And they start to symbolize like calm and ease, and perhaps a pondering that there's some sort of landscape happening inside me as well. And I think this image points to the existence of a presence that does exist both inside and outside the blue circle simultaneously. So I've shown a bit of work that was made around 3 to 5-ish years ago. And we're gonna fast track a little bit. I'm gonna skip over some other projects and things for the sake of time and for the sake of really digging in and talking about drawing and meditation. And this section is focused on sharing how I practice meditation as a process that allows me to pay attention to my body and my environment simultaneously. So I want to preface this section by saying there are a lot of different types of meditation, and I'm really no expert on any of it. I've done a lot of learning to get to the place of understanding that I currently have, and having a daily practice has been huge in that. Having the greatest influences on my practice have been writings of Thich Nhat Hanh, guided meditations that I find online and from the app Headspace, as well as kind of performing my own little experiments and just observing how I react and what I'm instinctually drawn to do. It's a bit of a hodgepodge, and in many ways, my practice is super unique and personal to me. But mindfulness, this attention, this awareness to inside and outside at the same time is the center of everything that I'm doing. So how I choose to meditate personally can be explained by looking at this soft sculpture. It's made of hand-dyed silk that has been sewn into pillows that are stacked on top of each other. These pillows are filled with soil, and each layer seeks to acknowledge these various layers of levels of earth. So the bottommost layer, where we have these purple and red bones, that is meant to represent the soil. And the pillow on top of that is kind of what grows from the soil. So we see plants, we see water, seeds, blood. And the third is air. We see clouds, some yellow birds. And at the very top is potentially outer space, or a plane of existence that's a bit more abstract. I also like to think of it as an eye or a tunnel that is funneling sensation in and out. This piece references meditation by its pillow form, and it suggests activation by anyone who would come to sit on it. And so when I meditate, I try to follow this upwards path, and I start with my body, and I pay attention to my breathing, my heartbeat, my emotions, any sensations that I can locate happening within me. And I like to locate essential energy and then visualize it expanding out as far as I can imagine. And so when I do this, I enter a state of mind that is present to myself and my environment. And I'm not thinking, I'm doing my best to return from thinking if I get caught into thinking. And I'm just trying to sense and be present and kind of live in that sort of spaciousness of the external and internal sensation that are being held in that moment as one thing. And so I often repeat the mantra, I am my environment is me. And so that brings us to our third diagram. And when I meditate, my attention is sitting on this perceived boundary of self and environment. So finally, this red dot has, after it's waffled back and forth, it's now sitting on this blue line, kind of representative of this internal and external awareness. And when I first started practicing meditation, I was viewing this as a really distinct moment that was separate from everything else that I was doing. And over time, I began understanding how I could begin to see drawing and meditation as two distinct actions. So one of these drawings could be meditate, or one of these dots could be drawing, one of these dots could be meditation. I began to see them as two distinct actions that were working within the same framework of mindfulness, both trying to rest in this duality of self and environment. And eventually, I began merging these two moments together. So meditating in my studio moments before beginning a drawing. And this has helped me really to consider what a line is. And as I've come to believe, and still do so, drawing a line is an incredibly sensitive process that records information. I guess similar to the way that a record player might record information. So if I draw a long arcing line on a large surface, it will tell you stuff. It tells you about the size of my body. It will record heartbeats as small quivering bumps along the line. It will record the arc of my breath, its speed or its slowness. It's affected by climate and temperature because I'm affected by climate and temperature. And the line holds all of this information and a lot more. So drawing from a state of mind that is present to my body and to my environment, then I believe holds the energy and influence of these things simultaneously. In this way, I view drawing as a miracle, a really banal miracle that we take for granted, that's capable of revealing great power. You just got to spend time looking at them. So for a span of time, I began asking myself, how can I get people to spend time looking at a drawing and get kind of locked into this power of sensation that I am experiencing while I'm working, but also when I'm looking at my work? And the answer was revealed to me by spending time, not the answer, but an answer was revealed to me by spending time with this drawing. So this is a really large drawing, and you can actually see it behind me in the video of me. And it's in my bedroom. It's 4 feet by 8 feet roughly. It's made of crayon, watercolor, and ink. And spending a lot of time meditating in front of this work, I found that resting my eyes softly upon the centered black flower actually invoked an entire collapse of this symmetrical image in a really profound way. And so it felt really intense and powerful when this happened for the first time. And I was experiencing the image in its totality. It was rich in sensation, and tried to rephrase this earlier to make it not sound cheesy, but I really felt like I was filled with love in that moment. And so the piece was eventually titled, "You've Got to Find a Way to Love Yourself." In response to what I learned from that drawing, I began a series of drawings that contained a central black void. And so this void is so dense that it appears as an absence of space. And I also want to say this drawing and the next few drawings are quite large. They're about 4 feet by 6 feet, just to give you a sense of scale. And so this void, it's dense, it appears as an absence of space, and it naturally draws the eyes of someone who's looking at this image. You get caught into the pull and the peripheral vision. One's peripheral vision is subsequently activated, and the viewer is able to experience the work in that totality that I was hoping for. Someone is able to experience that collapse into the eye in a way that could be a bit more accidental. And they can experience that energy present in body environment during its making. I think about this moment of profound looking as a moment of awe, a moment in time in which someone is flooded with sensation as a result of something that they encounter externally. This is a mindful moment in which there's a simultaneous awareness to one's body and one's environment, and also perhaps a forgetting that these things even exist. And in that forgetting, there's a momentary experience in which everything is understood as one and the same. And I think about this moment as a moment of really pure belonging. So belonging with oneself and those around us, with plants, flowers, bugs, clouds, worms, tomatoes, each other, whatever, this like larger earth. And so when entering the state of mindfulness and looking, it is belonging because it is being present within an ecosystem. We've not forgotten our humanness. We've not burrowed into our internal selves. We're entering belonging as a state of mind in which we're experiencing the world and ourselves as a collective ecosystem that's rich in sensation and life. It's a remembering that we don't need to alter ourselves in order to belong in the ecosystem of this earth. We've always belonged, and we always will. This past summer, I had the privilege of making this mural at the Great Parks Nature Center at the Summit in Cincinnati, Ohio. It is 300 feet long, and it's situated on a hill that recedes beyond the fence line. It gave me an opportunity to expand my drawings to include the environment in a new way. So when, excuse me, when one focuses on this black void, like in those drawings that I previously shared, the drawing does get activated and carried through the peripheral vision. But the thing that's really special about this mural is that the sky, which is so huge and so present in this work, it gets carried too. Recently, I've been letting go of the void as a tool. I still believe in this strategy and sometimes find myself returning to it, but these days I actually am leaning more deeply into the trust required in just letting the drawing emerge, letting go of preconceived ideas of what the final work ought to look like. And so paralleling this shift, I want to share one final diagram with you all. So we've been here. In a moment of mindfulness, my attention is existing along the blue line, and it's simultaneous. I'm simultaneously present to the environment and myself. But like the voids in my work, I realized I was viewing meditation and drawing as hyper-condensed moments that had a beginning and an end. Mindfulness, though, can be returned to in any action in any moment, and any moment can access this type of attention. And I realized I was just doing myself a disservice by isolating it to meditation and drawing alone. And so in this final diagram, we've gotten rid of the blue circle, we've gotten rid of the blue or the red dot, or rather expanded it and stretched it out. And so no longer isolating that moment of meditation or the moment of drawing. And so within the goal of my practice, or the goal of my practice is to do my best to exist on this continuum whenever I can remember to, while drawing and meditation will continue to exist as moments along the circle. I'm doing my best to try to carry that mindfulness between into everything else. And it's not easy, and it also maybe not achievable in this lifetime. I'm just really a regular person. But this is what I'm working towards. And my drawings, in a way, are evidence to a life effort at this sort of harmony and balance. So true belonging being true presence to the world inside and outside of our bodies as one ecosystem. So thanks for sticking with me this far. The next section, I'm going to talk about current and recent projects. And I've been primarily working with drawing on silk of late. So I'm going to be detailing that process, what it's like, and why it's meaningful to me. Then I'm going to go through some images of recent work and talk about what I'm thinking about with them. And specifically, the work that I'll bring up for that will be the work exhibited at United currently. So to begin, I want to talk about what silk is. And it comes from these really cute little creatures known as silkworms. And this is one in its larval stage. We can see it is in process of creating a cocoon. So it's had its fourth molt already. And you'll notice that there are these black dots along its body. These are spiracles, and they are related in function to help these creatures breathe. And I point that out now because I'm going to bring it up again later. And so typically their diet consists of mulberry leaves, and they convert these leaves into, or they access this fibroin protein from their diet to create the silk. And the strands form a cocoon to help them through that process of metamorphosis. So I think there's a lot in this. And it's really related to this philosophy, the philosophies that are surrounding my work. Silk is a fiber that emerges from the coming together of plant and animal. It naturally functions to protect, and because the fibers are prism-like, they reflect light at different angles to produce a shimmer of color. And as if in poem to the lines that I draw on the silk that I'm working with, each cocoon is actually composed of a single thread, a single line that is over a mile long, which is wild. And the caterpillar makes this cocoon by way of a figure 8 motion until completion. I think there's a lot in there. And so in extracting the cocoons, the worms are actually killed, freezing them forever in this dramatic process of change. So I'm going to jump into my studio here. Here's a photograph of it. I'm just realizing that you can see that I'm eating flaming hot Cheeto mac and cheese. But anyways, it's in the garage and it's subject to great fluctuations of temperature, and it actually affects how my materials behave depending on the season, which I think is really sweet. And I also like working in the garage because it's dirty and silk feels out of place here. And I like the idea of kind of like expelling these beautifully colored objects out of this dirty garage. And so one reason I also like the garage is because it allows me to open the door and extend my studio out into the driveway between myself and my garden. And I can hear birds, cars, wind. It's home to mice that I have occasionally fed. No, I'm not supposed to do that, just small things. And lots of spiders, a lot of things going on in there. And so before meditating and drawing, I stretch silk between stretcher bars that are fashioned from PVC pipe. And then the silk is held in place with binder clips that are attached to stretchy hair ties to keep tension. The actual drawing process happens very quickly. I really get into the zone and just go at it. And here we see a 44-inch by 44-inch square of silk that has been stretched. And if you look closely, you can see all the lines have been placed and they're ready to have dye added. These lines are made from a paste that is referred to as a resist. And when it hardens, it halts and blocks the flow of dye, allowing for clean partitioning and intentional application of color. And so you can see that here. In my work, I am actually applying more dye than necessary. This results in the dye overflowing. And because my motions are often really quick as I'm drawing, the spread of the resist often becomes quite thin, and it contributes to the overflow of the dye. To me, the spilling over relates to the liquid exchange and the connection of all living things. And this is an older, well, this work is about a year old when I wasn't quite pushing that to its extreme as I'm doing now. But you can kind of see in this black bottom right square how dye is kind of fusing and passing through beyond this line and is not being contained. Here's a piece that's currently on view at United, a process image, and it's titled Tiniest Blue Flower. This is a unique piece because I started with blue silk as opposed to white, and you can also see that I've added pigment to the resist. So it's no longer white and clear, but it's black. And you can see how I build color. I work with one color at a time, and I view color application as a way of directing attention to certain areas and helping a viewer to visualize the various elements of the work, which can often be quite busy and quite flooded with information. So I try to use color to pinpoint certain areas to allow people to access whatever potential narrative might be happening within the work. And because I work with multiplicities, where a hand could also be a flower, could also be a bird, I try to use color to push the multiple ways of interpreting forms and inviting that possibility of a narrative to unfold for somebody. The color also functions to elicit mood, naturally, not intentionally so, but this is also done very intuitively. It's never planned out. And color also functions to kind of just suck people in. I think we like to be drawn to things that are colorful. And I also think about color as sort of woven into the work, and the way that I apply it sometimes feel like things are crisscrossing each other and things are folding and getting wrapped, which that sort of language might be hard to understand, but that's the best way that I know how to describe it right now. And when a silk is completed, it is dried, just air dried, and then it's prepared for steaming. So to steam the work, I lay down multiple layers of newsprint and carefully roll the silks into a tube. If any wrinkles are present during this rolling, they'll be permanently steamed. So I take extra permanently steamed, and like you can't really get rid of them. So I take extra care to minimize this, and I'm still terrible at it, working on it. And the paper functions to prevent the silk from bleeding while it's being steamed. So here's the silks all rolled up into a cute little bundle, and they've been placed into a fabric bag. And then they're placed into my vertical steamer. And so in this image here, you can see the steamer that I'm working with. It's made of a hot plate with a ceramic pot on the bottom. And essentially I'm just creating an extra tall pot. And I've extended it with the use of ventilation tubing, and then I've insulated that. And so the tube is placed into the vertical steamer and the water boils below and it creates a really hot and humid environment. I steam it for 2 hours, roughly, and the dye molecularly fuses to the silk and it becomes permanently bonded. And so this process of bonding the dye to the silk is unlike a standard drawing or painting where layers are placed on top of each other. With my silk drawings, everything actually exists as one cohesive object. And I think that's really important. And here's just another close-up of the silk hanging in this large tube. You can see that I'm careful not to have it touch the sides to prevent water from getting into that carefully wrapped bundle. And yeah, after they're steamed, I wash them, I iron them, and all of the excess dye and resist gets washed away. And the silk returns to its original luster and lightness, moving gently with any motion of air. So here's a video of work that I was fortunate enough to share at the Dream Clinic project space in Columbus, Ohio. And this piece was titled 3 Birds, and I view it as a performance piece. And it concluded the exhibition's opening, where attendees witnessed these 3 large silks, 4 feet by 10 feet roughly, being raised by an industrial garage door into the evening sky. One of them had been previously in the gallery and kind of brought out and rejoined with its companions. And so we timed it with the setting sun, not like we see in this video here, which was taken after the fact. The original performance was timed with the setting sun, and a collective silence was held for 7 minutes as the silks blew these silks in the breeze. As the breeze blew these silks. And so birds were chirping from above, and it was really a special moment. I'm really proud of that. And I show this video here because I want you to see how the silk can move. Within the gallery space, movement of a body passing by or even a breath can induce the silk into motion. And I think about this as a silk reminding us of our own presence and bringing us back to our body. And I also share this as my first attempt at trying to facilitate a collective sense of belonging in a gallery space. That's something that I'm interested in doing more. And I have long-term plans for that. Yeah, so now I'm going to just go through the work that's currently up at United and talk about some things that I was thinking about when I was making it and when I was observing it. So the exhibition at United is titled Everything Communicating, and within it you'll notice a recurring theme of the body, garden, nature, and ecosystem. These are elements that are commonly present in my work. More pointedly though, for my own self, and to kind of go into the work, the question for myself, I wanted to use this exhibition to explore black dots as a connecting point throughout most of the drawings that make up the show. So for me, these black dots are super interesting. They're situated in central cavities between lines, anchoring themselves into the negative space. And because of their location, they exaggerate the fluidity and lyricism of the lines, tethering them together in a language that feels quite musical to me. They can be interpreted as eyes, seeds, dust, energy, constellations, moles, magic, and they also mimic the spiracles used for breathing that are on the bodies of silkworms. In this piece titled Angels in Bed / Wings, the dots also result in a busyness of compositional space that can be energizing. I see these 2 figures in this piece as enveloped and wrapped into each other as if forming some form of joint cocoon. I also explored making drawings that were attuned to the vertical scale of my body for the first time. So in this piece titled Three Earth Angels, each silk panel is about 4 feet by 6 feet roughly, and drawing on these silks were incredible. I loved it. It felt like dancing. It was super pleasurable to just be moving and watching a body sort of materialize in front of you. I loved making these works. And in the state of making, I loved it so much. I would often just start laughing because it was really just a joyful experience for me. And another thing about this work that I think is interesting is that it's triad. It's three things together, and I have a tendency to do that in my work. You saw that in the performance with the three birds. And I'm really curious. It's not something that I've explored in depth, but I'm curious how the aesthetics of my Catholic upbringing potentially are fused into the way that I make today. I'm happy to share that this piece, titled Inside of a Flower, has been donated to United and will be moved to the chapel at the conclusion of the exhibit. I'm really grateful that it will have a space to live and be lived with. And while the narrative within the work was never intentional, I take in the scene as if I've been shrunken down and placed into the cup of a flower. And so looking past the pistils and stamens of this flower, my attention is held to a centrally located star. It's not a black void, but it's not so far off either. And this piece also clearly references that bleed of color past boundaries that I talked about earlier. And you can really see the Kelly green of these stalks diffusing and mixing into that cyan blue of the night sky. This particular work is titled Tiniest Blue Flower. And at first glance, the scale of the work, which is 4 feet by 6 feet, as the scale and the colors suggest that perhaps the flower in question has been zoomed in upon, abounding in bursts of blues, oranges, and greens. But really, I'm gesturing to the tiny light blue petals at the very center of the image. Everything surrounding, encircling, functioning as some sort of visual celebration to this small moment of life. Improvisational in its making, as all of the work that I made in this exhibition. This composition, as is true for, this composition was unplanned, and I didn't know how it would emerge, but I find it very interesting that the next work really shares the same type of flow, where we have this like sort of undulating line going across, and this and you'll see that as I transition into this next image. I did the slow fade for this one. And so I'm really intrigued by this repetition. I'm intrigued that separate improvisational works that are made upon silks of the same dimension and scale share values of compositional space and flow. I wonder, have my drawings naturally begun to develop an understanding of the way that energy is to be carried through an image? Negative and positive space balancing like oil that's poured into a cup of swirling water. Is there a cohesive and shared logic between two cups? Contained by the edges of the silk, do my lines operate to push and pull like the currents of air that perfectly circle the container of our planet's atmosphere? What is this shared logic between my images, and where is it coming from? Is this logic of harmony, motion, and balance coming from this? Earth? I don't know the answer. And in this really big question, I'm wondering, what am I doing? Am I spending my life drawing one thing over and over again? Again and again and again, are my drawings really just the same? Do they just appear different because they're pretending to be different, disguised as different through quirks of symbol and story, and made irregular by my inability to work perfectly balanced between self and environment? And in contemplating this idea, I think that this must be true. And as I continue to work, I wonder, what is the truth that is maintained across everything that I do? These questions, this big question, will probably always be on my mind. And it brings me to the final section of my talk. So to close this out, I want to share two last things with everybody. Some of it is writing for my journal. It's a bit like a poem. It's titled My Perfect Drawing. And then I'm also going to share some drawings that I did with ink on paper. And these drawings were made all in one evening together in rapid succession, each one taking about 15 seconds and then quickly moving on to the next. They're sized at 18 inches by 24 inches, and they're made with ink and a brush. And I think they're really special. I don't know why, but I keep coming back to these images again and again and again. So I'm gonna start reading. Feel free to just sit back, relax, and take in the lines and the words. My perfect drawing. My perfect drawing practices returning to itself. It does not want to be interrupted by the outside world. It wishes to be attuned to it. Feeling the sound of the birds chirping beyond studio windows. My perfect drawing does not end. It may be distracted, but it always chooses to practice. It always chooses to feel inside its body and outside of its body. Wandering its lines from chest to sky. And so, my perfect drawing remembers what it is like to plant dahlia bulbs in spring, and what it is like to experience grief. And what it is like to be present to many things. It remembers because it was always there, drawing. And this is the type of drawing I'm spending my life to make. And that is all I have for y'all. Thank you, everyone, for coming out, listening. I think we have time for questions, but I also wanted to point out that my contact information is here on this slide. And my next exhibition will be taking place at No Place Gallery in Columbus, Ohio. Reception is March 11th from 6 to 9. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Benedict. That was awesome. I know there are comments and questions, so feel free to put them in the chat or to unmute if you're on Zoom. Raise your hand. I'll hand you the mic here in the room.
I have a quick question over on Zoom here. When you were speaking about like the creation of silk, you wrote freezing them forever in a state of change. And I'm just curious as how that statement and action is like interpreted or idealized in your work and in your process.
Yeah, thanks, Jess, for that question. And thanks for coming to the talk. You
Of course.
know, I think that acknowledging for me that the silk comes from a process of death allows me to, I guess, just like respect it a little bit more. In that regard, also a lot of the work that I create is really tapped into these cycles of life. And so we have decomposition, we have birth, we have death, we have constant state of transition. And so I say that they're frozen in this state of metamorphosis. And I'm attracted to that as sort of like a counter to what I'm interested in, but also they do eventually decompose. And I think that, yeah, it's really just about kind of understanding that there's a life that is taken in the process of utilizing this material.
Thank you.
Maybe while folks are thinking, I have a question. I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about the symmetry that appears in your compositions, that there's a lot of these mirror, even not necessarily exact mirrors, but a lot of kind of pairing of figures, of plants. And is that necessarily or only tied to the void and the framing of the void, even when the void is maybe not explicitly there? Or and I'm maybe along similar lines also interested in the function of the border in your drawings and in your silk drawing or your silk paintings.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. So I'll start with the symmetry. And symmetry is interesting to me because the symmetry didn't start happening until I started meditating in conjunction with the drawings. And so that was a kind of that was a moment of intrigue for me. And I think that, I mean, focusing on the body in that moment, which is symmetrical, I think that sort of translated into the work in some way. And now that I know that the symmetry is there, I wonder too if like my subconscious is just like, put that in there. But I think that there is some really earnest place that it came from initially, at least. And the void, sorry, what was your second question? Oh, the borders.
Yep.
Yeah, so the borders are interesting. And I think that they originally started because I was drawing quilts. And so within that, I started playing around, but they started to evolve into something more meaningful to me over time. And when I am choosing to make a work that has a border, the first thing that I do draw is the border. I don't fill it in, but I draw the lines that are crisscrossing verticals and horizontals. I start with those and I'll add more as I go. And within those lines, little discrepancies happen. There might be a wiggle or there might be a bump. And I utilize those moments as access points to grow a line out of. And so they sort of inform the overall composition because I'm trying to pay attention to everything around me. I'm also paying attention to these lines that have come before. And so in that way, they kind of give me a low pressure way to start an image that can be quite, just low pressure. I'm just drawing lines across, and then the image can kind of grow out of that.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Idris.
Hi, beautiful work, beautiful ways of talking about it. I wanted to know more about your relationship with play. I think that you mentioned that you were, that your meditation practice informed a bit of how you approach drawing recently. what I like about your recent work is that it does feel joyful and playful, but not in kind of like a flat way, but in a complex way. I was wondering how you embrace play, how you think about play, and if that's changed over time, from the early work you showed to now.
Awesome. That's a really great question. The first thing that comes into my mind is that lately I've been experiencing like a lot of pressure, just as I've been getting access to, or just greater opportunities that more people are going to see the work. I feel like I've fallen into this moment of really kind of second guessing myself a lot, which is really interesting because I put a lot of pressure I was putting a lot of pressure into these really condensed moments. And I think that sort of seriousness was a disservice to me. And so I'm trying to actually evoke more playfulness in the act of making, where I am just like really in it to see what can happen and really sucked into that pleasure of the experience of watching something kind of emerge in front of you. It is something that I really just absolutely enjoy. And so in that way, I guess it is tapped into this element of play. And I guess associated with this idea of experimentation, where I don't want to see something that I can already visualize in my head. I want to be surprised. And I think for me, play is sort of related to that. In the terms of like the trajectory of my career, I think I've waffled in and out of play as something that I've potentially been interested in. I think there was a lot of pressure, specifically in grad school, that I placed on myself to create very conceptual work, work that I could explain really sort of clearly with language. And that was stifling. And I found my work just sort of starting to become a bit rigid. And so I really have to I'm really trying to make from a place that is, for me, and tapped into this larger thing that I'm connected to. And so, and I think in that way, like it really becomes about what I need in that moment. And if what I need is to get away from seriousness, which I think can be often the case when I'm pressuring myself, I think that's when this sort of magical moment of drawing happens for me. I think, yeah. I've maybe not the most clearly articulated, but I gave a good stab at it. Yeah, thank you for your question.
Hi, Benedict. My name's Pan, and I just wanted to share a thought that came while you were talking about making this perfect drawing, or I guess before you got to the perfect drawing, and you were looking at everything and the repeats of patterns. And the thought that came in was how a tree might want to make a different shape of a leaf, and yet it's still in this, like an oak leaf looks very distinctly oak, even though every oak leaf individually might be different. And so it just sort of had this little visual for me to connect to what you were saying about your drawings being very like you just trying to find that thing that is you. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Wow, that was really gorgeous. Thank you. I really appreciate that comment.
Hi, Benedict. My name is Jacques. Yeah, thanks for being here. This is really inspiring. I'm really struck by your comment when you're painting the triad of those silks that were sort of your body height. And you said that it felt like you were dancing with these bodies that were like being constructed in front of you. And it made me think, and this might be too personal of a question, but it got me thinking like, well, what do you look like in your garage while you're painting these like swoopy lines? And I'm wondering if you can like say anything to like how you construct the line, and also maybe like what movement, like how does movement play a part of that? Because a lot of your lines look like movement and they feel like movement and the pictures look like they're moving. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that question. Yeah, so in the studio, especially if I'm working on larger works, like those three as a part of that triptych, I am standing, they're placed vertically. I like to draw on them as if they're standing in front of me. And as I start going, the movements are all happening very quickly. And so one thing that's happening for me when I enter a drawing like that is that my vision starts to not focus anymore. I'm not really using my eyes in a really direct sort of way. My eyes sort of go into this almost blur where I'm like aware of things around and in front. And I think because of that, I really just let into what's happening. And so motions happen with my entire body. And by that, I mean, I'm like squatting and making an arc as I'm like lifting up my body. And that way it does feel like I'm really dancing. And I think even more so as I explore this, I just made a piece that is 3 panels all at the same time, which is the first time that I'd done that. So similar in scale to those works. And in that process of drawing, I really didn't even know what was happening. I just was totally locked into this, like, I have to do something. It has to be what it's going to be. And so I just kind of started going. And that is how I prefer to work, I think. And I'm interested in that speed because I think that part of the reason why I want to work so quickly is because I don't want to lose my attention in the moment. I want to be sucked in. And I hope that as I grow older and keep practicing, or not hope, but I wonder if, like, as I gain a greater confidence and steadiness in my attention, I wonder if it may become more of a slower dance. And then, yeah, I don't know, kind of rambling a little, but I hope that answers your question somewhat.
It did. I can confirm. There are head nods. Yeah. Thank you. Maybe we have time for 1 or 2 more questions or comments. Yeah.
Hi, Benedict. Yeah, this talk was very inspiring. I'm trying to remember. I just keep thinking about the worms, honestly, those silkworms. And I was just thinking about how amazing it is that that thread, that the silk that they weave is like all, or they produce is just like this single thread. And thinking about your drawings as like this single line. I just having a hard time moving away from the awe of that. But I, like other people have mentioned, I just love how you're creating in collaboration with this greater ecosystem. And was really struck also by how you described your shift through your body of work and how that reflected, this like parallel between your relationship with place and nature and your relationship with your emotions and body. And sort of like this, I was like picking up on this theme of like just allowing more in, and allowing this like spilling over of lines also. But I guess you mentioned, having a garden practice, and being in the Midwest. And I'm just curious, as this evolution has happened through your work, how it's felt like in your practice of gardening and like walking through the woods or the wetlands or the rivers that you live by, like whether that practice of attention and mindfulness, and inviting more of like maybe the hard feelings that are going through your, landscape or inner landscape, as well as allowing more of that joy and play. Like, I'm just curious if anything has shifted in the way that you experience, the world around you, the natural world and all the other creatures and there.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, I mean, I think that my initial thought is that I probably spend more time in the garden than necessary. I think the more that I develop this artistic practice and this life practice, I just want to slow down. I don't think that the world is conducive to that for most people. we're really fighting and have a lot of obstacles in our paths. And I even just think like right now I'm really lucky because I recently came into a fellowship that had a decent amount of money that allows me to be slow. And it allows me to not have to worry about where my next paycheck is coming from for a moment. And because of that, like I've really slowed down, and it's been really great. I think that there is always something, I feel like I'm always trying to like trying to remember that the attention that I have and the state of mind that I'm trying to cultivate for myself, that there's always something new to kind of uncover within that. And there's plenty that I forget and have to be reminded of. And I think that over time, I just have been steadily becoming less like this and more like this. Still ebbing and flowing just like everybody else, but yeah, and for me that really means like I have more time to take in things that are around me, and largely like I think I've become a much better listener within like the people that I hang out with, and I think that that has been huge in terms of like being able to genuinely connect with people.
Stephanie says thank you. Any last questions or comments? Oh, more hands. Oh, goodness. Okay.
Hello, Ben. I just
Hi.
wanted to, hey, I just wanted to make a correlation between how you talked about lines and how you express their communication, and how lines communicate, and what you talk about a line as its communication, and noticing the correlation with the dots and how we've used dots and lines to communicate over time. I also wanted to like Morse code and stuff like that, but
Oh,
I
totally.
wanted to, yeah, I wanted to ask you, do you also listen to music after your meditation while you're doing your inks and stuff like that? Does that have any influence or effect?
That's a great question. I think it does have an effect. And because of this, I no longer listen to music in the studio. And sometimes I do, but it's very rare lately. I really am just like wanting to be focused, and to the point where like even like chewing gum, like I don't like to chew gum because it feels like very distracting. And so yeah, I'm trying to minimize these things, because music, I guess, to me, at least some music, is probably derived from a similar way that I'm working, and it is derived from someone else's emotions and thoughts. And so I don't really want that to enter the work, and not necessarily because, and not that I don't want to have that as a whole hard and fast rule, but I think it's hard to pay attention. It's really hard. I'm talk about it in this lecture, but I can't say that I'm really that great at it. I think it's a life practice, and so taking out the music was just a way to try to help me to practice that, with less things to be taking in, if that makes sense. But I love that question, and I love the connection to the Morse code as well, and also just like handwriting and everything. So yeah, thanks, Sean.
Absolutely.
Next question, Kashif.
Hi, Benedict. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing your work. I'm struck by your amazing use of color in all of your work. And I wanted to know, in the pieces where you're doing work on already colored silks, and this heavy use of black and the lines and dots, how has that kind of different engagement with color created or changed the work, particularly as a viewer, our contemplation or reflection or time sitting with and viewing these particular pieces? Where do you see like this particular use of color taking the work?
Yeah, so the silks that were pre-dyed, I guess that in a way, I believe that like their influence as color affected how they came to look once lines were added to them, in the same way that like a rectangular canvas would affect that image, or a square would affect an image. And so I don't see it as so different from the other ways of working, but I think that yeah, it's just another thing of consideration when those lines go into play, that I feel are like the most sensitive part in terms of thinking about how the viewer is engaging with the work. I think that there's a bit more room to discover what's happening within the work in a way. I think things are a bit more hidden when I'm using one color and just line and those dots. And in particular with those works, I think that the sort of busyness and this inability to really focus on like one patch of color that may be a good place for the eye to rest. I think that the eyes are activated in a way that is quite almost like vibratory, or causes a viewer to kind of potentially experience looking in the same way that I am experiencing looking while I'm making, which is this sort of defocused sense. Yeah, the application of color, alternatively, like the after application of color, is, I feel like, very directly influenced by the lines. So the lines influence the color in those situations, and then the color is influencing the lines, at least in minor ways. I feel like there may have been more to your question, but I hope that gets to at least some of it.
Jen?
I was so excited when you were talking about the silk waving in the wind, and because at my church we had made worship flags with, not with silk, but with some other fabric that was, kind of like silk.
Oh my
And
gosh, yeah.
and it flows, where you can wave it and express yourself with the moving fabric. And the other thing I liked was when you were talking about the dye just going across the lines, because I had the hardest time figuring out how to stretch the fabric for all the kids to paint on, and so we just ended up taping the fabric to the plastic on the table.
Oh, okay.
But it ended up making these really cool watermarks on the, so like an accident ended up being beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's great.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any more comments or questions? Okay. Well, please join me in thanking Benedict one more time. Thank you, Benedict.
Thank you, everybody.